He was one of the few wrestlers that you saw with so many different black kids. He the only person I saw go to the hood. Like I was watching Bret Hart, like you see the commercials and the special stuff. You're like, yo, he was really like
Before
black
it was,
kids.
cool, or before you like
Before it was like before you got credit for it.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yes.
I had to do it. Cue the music, man. Yo, you did a good job on that theme music. I know I say it every week.
You definitely do.
Wrestling Wrealm now.
Every
look,
time we do something, you're like, oh man.
Look, if you don't like your own theme music, then why are you doing this show?
I agree. It just doesn't get old. Like it fits. Every time I hear it, it puts me right where I need to be at, so we can do Wrestling Wrealm stuff. Here we go.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode of the Wrestling Wrealm. I'm your host, Brian H. Waters, and I am with the remarkable, the impeccable, the one, the only, the real Dwayne Allen.
I don't know. It reminds me of the intro we do.
Oh, yeah. So, what's up, bro? How you feeling?
Chillin', man. I'm excited to be here once again because we are talking about one of my favorite all-time wrestlers, number one on the list, that is shared by two people. Don't ask me why. It just is the way it is.
Hey, you know what? For a long time, mine was shared by two people, but somebody else came and overtook that person.
You can call it whatever you want.
But I understand.
You definitely overtook him, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm excited.
So, we talking about the one, the only, the excellence of execution. We celebrate him on Hitman Thursdays, hashtag Hitman Thursdays on Instagram. Bret the Hitman Hart. Now, there's always this talk about
I just got hype.
Shawn Michaels being Mr. WrestleMania. And that's cool. It's fine. He's put on great performances. He's won the WWE Championship once there. But
You don't got to say it like that, though.
once. You know.
Disrespectful.
Yeah, think about it. He's only won one championship at WrestleMania. He's defended a couple. And he lost it one. But nonetheless.
Why are we bringing up Shawn Michaels' losses? This is not what this is about. We shouldn't be talking about Shawn Michaels' losses in his championship runs.
But we're talking about the excellence of execution. Bret the Hitman Hart. His SummerSlam runs are so unappreciated, right?
Why is that? Why SummerSlam's supposed to be the biggest event of the summer. It's the WrestleMania of the summer. It's so many iconic moments, so many iconic matches, so many situations and stuff that we've come from and that we've enjoyed as fans here, there, everywhere. But yet it's rarely talked about.
So there's always this talk about Bret Hart, and the reason why I think the SummerSlam run he had was underappreciated is because one, when Shawn Michaels was being named Mr. WrestleMania, which he named himself in a promo with Kurt Angle, we're looking at the year 2004, 5, 6, 7, somewhere around there. No, not yeah. So anyway, so he's doing this at this time. Bret Hart's not in the company. He's not even in good graces at WWE.
No, not yet.
So
he would make his way back. Hold on, be patient.
Yeah. So when they're establishing like these labels, he wasn't a part of it. Two, he didn't name it himself, right?
Sure.
But we as the fans sit back, especially as Bret Hart fans, we think about it. It's like, well, you think about some of his moments, like, man, Bret was still in the shows.
Yep.
Bret was establishing himself as a workhorse, a top guy, as a champion, a top guy, and a workhorse.
Yep,
so
I agree.
We're going to go into the 5 iconic moments that established Bret Hart as Mr. SummerSlam.
Boom.
So first I'm starting off with his first title win at SummerSlam. And as the tag titles, him and his brother-in-law, Jim the Anvil Hart, would beat Demolition in a 2 out of 3 falls match at SummerSlam 90. Now, here's the thing about that. Demolition, they was kind of like the WWE's version.
I knew you wanted. I was waiting. I said, let's see where he goes with this, but I got a feeling where he's going to catch
and granted, I was younger, but from when I was reading and all this stuff, it's like the WWE's version of the Road Warriors, right?
Sure.
So when the Road Warriors came over there, that was like this. That was supposed to be like the this big dream matchup, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But
that nobody remembers.
Right.
Yep.
You had the Hart Foundation, you know, going out there, establishing yourself. Mind you, remember, Bret Hart, Jim the Anvil, Davey Boy Smith,
Right. Yeah.
Dynamite Kid.
Sure.
They all from Stampede Wrestling.
Okay.
Stu Hart said, "All right, you Vince, you taking my company, take my boys." So, yeah, Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil going out there, they're doing their thing, and right here they win the tag titles. So, like I said, you know, that was just one of the moments. Like, this is getting started. You know, when you start putting this together, you're like, okay, it all started right here for Bret Hart's iconic moments, because he was going to have a run at SummerSlam, which we'll get into, but this was the first one.
Absolutely. What's one of the biggest takeaways that you notice from that match? You're more of a tag team aficionado than most. And I say that in terms of appreciating what tag team wrestling was as a kid. You don't hear too many people talk about tag team wrestling, what it was to you as a kid, because, you know, the state of it today isn't what it used to be.
Right.
And it doesn't have the same appeal and draw business-wise, according to a lot of former professionals that have worked in the wrestling space, right?
Yep.
But as a kid, what is in the pink and black attack versus Demolition? We always talk about there's always one guy that often stands out in a tag team that kind of gives you that feel. Now you have Jim the Anvil Neidhart, that's the powerhouse.
Yeah.
And then you have Bret the Hitman Hart before he's really the Hitman. And you have this in-ring technician, as Vince McMahon will say, Bret Hart was always the first real WWE champion that he had of that generation.
Yeah.
You know, we came from the cartoon age, the superhero age, to a guy that didn't really come with a serious gimmick. He came with his wrestling. He was known for being what he was. Now, this is all before all that became polished and defined as what we know and love. But at the same time, we saw the antithesis. I don't know if that's even the right word, but we see.
You've said it enough on the show. It's a word.
Okay, well, it's a word today. We see the beginning of where that stuff was. We see the humble beginnings, the start. What did you notice about Bret Hart during that time in this tag team that you felt like at some point this guy is going to be one of the ones that we look forward to as one of our favorites? And we can say that because he became one of our favorites as a kid.
Well, I was 3.5, 4.
Why do you have to say your age?
At the time.
It doesn't matter. You've seen Bret Hart before. You've seen the old matches, and you want to talk about. Nobody said you saw it live. You're talking about when you first saw the match from where he was at.
No, but you know, just
the kids gonna make fun of you if you keep telling people your age.
Hey, look, I'm proud of my age. My dad still say, "I hope you get this old."
Okay. You can be old all you want.
Age-wise, not.
Look, you said it. You said it, not me.
But you know, just watch it like the finesse, right? Like you said, you had the powerhouse. Yep. But then you had Bret going in there. He was a master technician.
Yes, he was.
Wrestling wasn't the problem with him. It was the story, not the storytelling, the character,
the persona.
Yeah, you know, that was the thing you saw develop, which we will get into in the next couple of years. But right here is where you knew he had the wrestling, he had the ability inside the ring, and working with a guy who was full of charisma, kind of helped elevate him. And that's the thing, we got to give Jim the Anvil Neidhart his props, because that guy was walking charisma, may he rest in peace, but he was walking charisma, just hilarious.
One thing I noticed about Bret Hart in those early years is that he was cerebral. He was very calculated in everything that he did. We always talk about...
That's why he don't like Triple H, because he thinks Triple H is a fake cerebral, but he's a real cerebral.
Don't even know where to begin when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But what you notice about Bret Hart was the way he worked a match. And when I say worked, I mean his style of performing in the ring. It gave us a sense of realism, because it was a way to relate to the audience in a way that we didn't know that we could relate to wrestlers.
Yeah.
See, I just dropped a gem on you. Let me break it down so I can give you a better understanding of what exactly I'm talking about. When you're in a fight, right?
I ain't been in one in so long.
I hope, as you just talked about your age, I hope that you wouldn't be. I mean, we shouldn't still be beating people this age, but I don't know.
Well, you know.
Well, I'm glad you haven't been in a fight.
But go ahead.
You got a bad knee, right? And you notice that a knee is weak in a fight. You saw Bret Hart, boom, attack the knee, right? And as a kid watching TV, now your mind is simple. You're a child, so you're full of imagination. You're not thinking or overthinking. You're watching wrestling, so you're having fun and you're watching it. And you notice that this guy's constantly going after the knee. So when the opponent gets up and his knee buckles and he's hobbling and he's limping, Bret Hart will purposely do things to go back to that knee. as a kid watching that, it goes, man, this guy's really going after his knee.
Yeah.
So when the buildup comes at some point as the match begins to develop and elevate, goes through its peaks and its valleys throughout the match, you notice that this one guy is purposely attacking certain parts of the body that he's rather relentless about it, that in the long run will have an effect on the outcome of the match itself.
Yep.
You know, later on we would see it as the sharpshooter. You know, of course they had the finisher and the heart attack, but we noticed this was considered a style of wrestling that we had not been privy to because we were kids. Now, mind you, it has existed around the world, but you got to think about wrestling being a national product was still relatively new at this time.
Mm-hmm.
But Bret Hart, to me, was one of the pioneers and the leaders that took that style of professional wrestling and made it make sense to me as a kid, even in the early tag match with the Hart Foundation versus Demolition at SummerSlam. Boom!
Well, alrighty then.
Boom,
I
boom.
mean, that exclamation
Got
mark.
it from Kevin Hart. He does that a lot. I just think it's funny.
I just had a conversation with my son about how he's not that funny.
Boom! Boom!
But let's move forward.
Next SummerSlam.
We're going right to the next year.
Okay.
SummerSlam '91. Bret the Hitman Hart against another legend, another second generation superstar.
Yep.
Mr. Perfect, known to many as Kurt Hennig. Going in, IC champion, one of the greatest Intercontinental champions of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Young kids, Google him if you know nothing about him.
They should.
You had to listen. You had to be there.
I would encourage you to watch the WWE Network, but it's on Peacock now. For those who have watched this before, you know exactly why I'm staring at the camera the way that I am.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, so you have Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect.
Got you.
Now you have this guy who's established.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Intercontinental champion.
That's right. Yep.
And then you have this other guy who's coming. Now he's fresh on a singles run. Just not too long, lost the tag titles. You know, he said, okay, Bret, we're gonna put you by yourself, see what you can do.
Right.
Now he's starting to get a little personality. Starting to get a little bit of swagger.
Started getting the shades.
Yep.
Yes,
and
sir.
now them two go out there have an incredible match. Now I want y'all to do your homework.
Please do.
I want you to check out this match, and I also want you to check out his match with Mr. Perfect as King of the Ring 1993. Now Perfect had a bad back in this match right here in '91. But he was still able, and you know, something Bret Hart referenced in his book, how Mr. Perfect was able to, you know, really help get him over.
Sure.
And you know, Bret will win the title. But this was his first Intercontinental Championship, a very important run, and that would take us to now mid-card Hart. And now he's
that's clever. You just came with that on the spot?
Just came on the spot. Mid-card Hart,
you can take
right
on
on
10 years.
Hey man, 10 years, that's what we do, shawty.
Mid-card Hart.
Yeah, mid-card Hart, and you know, he was established, and what was the mid-card title? The workhorse title.
Absolutely.
So he's established himself as a workhorse guy, and this was the match right here to do it.
As we talk about these things, I get super hyped up because this was the beginning of my Bret Hart fandom. Like this era of Bret Hart, when I as a kid, like I was so young during the Hogan, and don't get me wrong, I had all that, but it was early '90s Hogan.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's when all that stuff was buzzing around. Sure, I was born, but my brother experienced that stuff. He's about 3 years older than me, 2.5 years older than me. He got to experience that stuff more firsthand than I did. I kind of got the back end of it. So Bret Hart, man, when he came out, he's the only person that made pink and black at that time for a boy cool to acknowledge. And that's not something we wore, but we, you know, when you saw pink sunglasses, even those type of shades in the stores, you wanted to get as close to pink as possible because you wanted to feel like Bret Hart. This version of him was, to me, the beginning of what I knew as the Hitman, which would eventually become my favorite wrestler. And this match was such a
classic, man.
It even as when you watch a match as a kid and you watch a match as an adult and it makes you feel the same way, no matter how many times you've seen it. Come on, man, I can go home. Like, I can go home on that. Like this was the beginning. When I saw that, I was like, yo, this guy is.
And see,
like,
we just 2 matches in.
And this is what I'm saying. This is the beauty of it, and that's the greatness of Bret the Hitman Hart. Now, because his career ended prematurely, we're that generation now where we don't often talk about Bret Hart as much as we should because it's just been out of sight, out of mind. Like we talk about the comparisons between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, and even in my fandom because they're both my number one favorite wrestler. One wrestled longer than the other.
Yeah.
So we have so much more of a generational catalog that followed, you know, after Shawn, when he made his return versus what we have with Bret Hart. But these moments should not be slept upon. They should be they should be treasured, and they should be acknowledged. And you should even hit Bret Hart on Twitter and Instagram and these other social media platforms and tell him how much you appreciate the hard work and stuff that he put into. Because think about it, and I'm gonna tell you another thing. He was one of the few wrestlers that you saw with so many different black kids. He the only person I saw go to the hood. Like, I was watching Bret Hart, like, you see the commercials and the special stuff. You're like, yo, he was really, like,
before
black kids.
Cool? Or before you, like...
Before it was, like, before you got credit for it?
Yeah,
like before,
that's the word, yep.
Because, mind you, the business was at a down period. Like, it's not like business was booming. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
We're going to get there, because I know where you're going.
If you look at the context during that time, as a kid, and you see all these other kids, it's like, yo, Bret Hart is that guy. He gave us something to look up to before the match with the sunglasses, during the match, after the match, the presentation. But yeah, I'm here because it's Bret Hart, and this time I'm gonna be the whole show. Any show we do with Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, this is how I'm gonna be.
Well, this next moment involves both of them in the ring.
It keeps getting better.
Yeah, both of them in the ring together.
It started here, and then we're here, and now we're going here, and now we're going here.
This right here would unfortunately be...
You keep saying, what?
Unfortunately be his last title win in WWE before he would, come back and win the United States Championship in 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, 2010. Sure. But this was when he beat The Undertaker.
Okay.
Now, at this point...
Wait. Time out. You said this is his last title win?
His last WWE Championship win.
Gotcha.
SummerSlam 97.
Gotcha.
Him and Undertaker, Shawn Michaels was the referee. Mm-hmm. Now, this is that story that's ultimately trying to get us to Bret and Shawn in the ring.
I remember that.
We were supposed to get it at King of the Ring. Mm-hmm. We never got a chance to get it. Mm-hmm. But this was was it that King? Yeah. But this is the story, but that one wasn't supposed to be for the title. Yeah. Okay. But, this is supposed to get us there, and, him and Taker go out there. I thought they had a good match. The story obviously sold itself. This would set up a story for Undertaker and Shawn Michaels at Hell in a Cell. Mm-hmm. But right here, Bret Hart winning the championship, mm-hmm. It's just one of the other things that just this right here was the exclamation part. Like, okay, this is Mr. SummerSlam.
This match was always special to me because they had three of my favorite wrestlers at the time, and you couldn't go wrong with Undertaker. First of all, Undertaker and Bret Hart, their feud to me is so underrated, and it was so short. But two of my favorite matchups in my personal Fig Federation, it was Bret Hart, Undertaker.
We gotta get some content around that because you've been doing a lot of cool stuff. I know everything ain't for the internet.
You'd be surprised.
But the stuff you've been putting together there,
you'd be surprised.
I think we got something.
Mike, it's soon to come. Trust me.
Okay.
Bret Hart,
I just
Undertaker.
put you on the spot too.
No, look.
That's what happens. Usually, I'll say, "Hey, babe, we're gonna create this content. We wanted to create this brand 10 years ago. This is what we're gonna do."
He also says things like, "I have pizza at the house. Come and hang out." And then there's no pizza. There's a camera set up, and then we got to do stuff. Like I'm not planning on doing any work, but I wanted to eat pizza. But that's how that happens. Now look, that's what he does. This is what he does.
Here, y'all. Here's your pizza, man. You keep talking about pizza. There's your pizza.
You see this?
Oh, you got a couple of logos. They ain't sponsored the show.
This is what he does. This is not what I was referring to. Like I said, back to Bret Hart and The Undertaker. Clearly, as a kid, I'm assuming everything's supposed to be what I wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. I wanted to see Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, and Bret Hart in a triple threat match, right? Yep. But it was just as good because Bret Hart, Undertaker was always one of my favorite matchups. I always liked watching Bret Hart go up against bigger guys because he always knew how to work around the size differences. Not everybody can do that and make it entertaining, make it believable. Man, especially with Undertaker was the champion at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah, Undertaker was the champion. He was just he won the title, Sid, WrestleMania.
Now in my mind, since the very first ladder match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart in the early years,
about it. Yep.
I automatically assumed that Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels were always bitter rivals and enemies. That's something I picked up on as a kid, even if it may not have been true. But I always associated these guys together.
I had a magazine with that match in there. That's how I found out about it. I remember me and my sister colored the magazine, but I remember that.
We talked about this at some point in the last 10 years, but I remember the first time me actually seeing this match was on one of those
Coliseum
videos. Yeah. And I was like, that's it right there. Bret Hart, because if you had one wrestler, you had to have who's the guy he's going to go against. Mm-hmm. In my mind, it was always Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and I wasn't a fan of Shawn Michaels at that time, but I knew that was, to me, that was his rival off bricks.
Yeah.
So seeing him in this match, you knew like, oh, this is going to get tricky, and then just the you can go into the match, you can go back and watch it. We could be here all day, but we gotta keep going. But the finish, of course, the spit, the chair shot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it said 1,000 things, but once again, that's a moment that lives on in history. That's always attached to Bret Hart. That's always attached to The Undertaker. That's always attached to Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Imprinting its place in SummerSlam history, and also Bret Hart's association with his greatness at SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm. Wow, man. Yeah, that one right there. But, this next one.
Mm-hmm. What's next?
Woo, woo, woo. This one's special.
Okay. What we got?
Oh, man. SummerSlam 94. Cage match. This is something, we talked about this. Brother. Bret Hart, Owen Hart. Now, Bret, Owen Hart, it said on Bret Hart's A&E special,
mm-hmm.
Owen Hart was ready to walk away from wrestling. It felt like he was being used.
Yep.
Bret Hart said, come on, little brother, I got you. He took him here, pulled him up here, helped people understand the greatness that was Owen Hart.
Yeah.
And right there, it reminds me of a show I want to do. Maybe we'll talk about that. But, the mind goes rolling so fast. But, like, right there, those two go out there. They have an incredible match. Anytime you put Bret and Owen in the ring together, they're going to do great things. And,
sure. Yep.
But this right here was just in the middle of that, his second title reign. We talked about the first title reigns. And I would say Bret Hart's first title reign, it wasn't as, like, great as Shawn Michaels' first title reign.
Sure.
But I will say that he was reestablishing and reprogramming the fans. So he had such a huge weight on his shoulders.
He had a difficult job to do, especially during that time.
And then Vince kind of went backwards because he put the title on a big guy.
Sure.
But, in this case, Bret was like...
Do you remember anything from Diesel's title run? No. Go ahead.
Now I was talking about Yokozuna, but yeah, that too. I do remember Diesel's title run, but that's a different story. But, Bret was like in... I do. Diesel versus Mabel, SummerSlam 95.
Oh, excuse me.
Diesel versus Sid. After Shawn Michaels, after Sid powerbombed Shawn Michaels.
Nobody, Brian H. only. Nobody remembers that match.
Two dudes with attitudes winning the tag titles.
Who was he associated with?
HBK.
Okay.
But I remember his title run. But but like 94 was Bret Hart's, title run, and this was like right at the height of it, and that match with Owen Hart, a cage match. It solidified everything. Now, here's the crazy thing. It didn't main event the show. Obviously, they was main eventing Undertaker versus Undertaker. But kids, like I always say, remember people was getting mad that Punk wasn't main eventing and Kofi wasn't main eventing. You go out there and have the best match. Years later, you won't even remember who main evented unless you really think about it.
And that, you talk about the gym. You just dropped a big one right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big fact right there.
Yeah.
Anybody who understood Bret Hart, Owen Hart, anyone that has siblings, brothers. Mm-hmm. It's such an easy story to relate to.
Yeah.
Older brother, younger brother living in the shadows. And most people don't. I don't think I realized it at the time, but you go back, you look at the history books and you watch the specials, and you realize they were 7 years apart.
Yeah.
So you can understand the way that Bret Hart has talked about his relationship with Owen. Like, even when you have a child that's 7 and then you have a baby, that's kind of your child that you take over. That's the way it works sometimes. So to see what they were able to do together. And to have an iconic moment, you will always in your mind remember Bret Hart, Owen Hart in that blue steel cage.
Yeah, and big blue, baby.
And as unforgiving as that still was, that match left an imprint that we talk about to this day. It almost stands still in time, because of unfortunate events that would happen later on down the line, but it's difficult when you have to recognize somebody's greatness that's not here anymore because you can't give them their flowers.
Yeah.
And, Bret Hart gave us one of the greatest tributes to his brother, which was the gift of working with him and him being able to share his talent with us at that level. Because it's not like Owen Hart was a main event talent.
No.
You know what I mean? And, so for Bret Hart to be able to recognize what his brother was able to do, and to me, it put Owen Hart on the map. It showed us who Owen Hart was. It gave us that personality. And then it just showed just what they could do in the ring. They've always said Owen Hart was the best one out of all the Hart brothers. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's that way when you have the youngest one that kind of comes up and watches everything.
I don't know.
talent-wise.
I think people say that because Owen's gone. I still think Bret was the greatest.
But we're talking about talent-wise, though. We're not talking about overall. I'm
looking at talent.
Athletic ability in the ring. He could work a number of different styles. He, like, a lot of people called up, like, Owen Hart reminded him of Kurt Angle before Kurt Angle.
That's true, but did Owen Hart, like, work with the bigger talent the way Bret did?
Well, see, we're not talking about that. We're talking about just overall wrestling talent. As in skill, ability, stuff. He could do more than everybody else.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's what I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
but
it's a good. Either or, you can't go wrong.
No, of course not. You know what I mean? Especially when one guy's life was unfortunately cut short. So we don't know what he was capable of. But as far as pure talent, they say, oh no, he could do everything. You know what I mean? And for his brothers to be able to put him on that platform and bring him to his level, because we're talking about the top guy in the company. Yeah. WWF champion at the time. Working with his brother in a storyline that's far more important than the world title, which is what we all appreciate and what we grew up on. But once again, gives us a legacy of iconic moments at SummerSlam. And
I'm gonna get to the last one, but just the way
it's over already. It's one more.
Yeah.
Dang.
It's one more. Now, the number one match.
Okay, here we go. Finally got it down to the last part. Here we go. Last one.
So this match right here, for me, is what established Bret Hart as Mr. SummerSlam.
Okay, all right, got you. I'm there. Here we go.
The match with Owen, phenomenal.
Okay, this is the build-up.
The match with Undertaker, he wins the championship.
You reeling me in?
This right here is proof that you can go over and a loss sometimes better than a win, depending on the right story being told. And this right here is my favorite SummerSlam match. It's one of my favorite matches, top 5 favorite matches in the history. It's a match that if you are in denial of the greatness of Bret the Hitman Hart, this is the match you need to see. SummerSlam 1992, Wembley Stadium. Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog for the Intercontinental Championship.
Got to be one of the greatest Intercontinental Championship matchups of all time.
Yeah.
2 popular superstars. We're talking 2 baby faces, 2 fan favorites in this epic matchup. And they were not the World Championship title match.
No.
Right? Now, granted, that doesn't mean much to us now. But back in those days, usually your top guys, and we're talking about the WWE Championship match, always, if not most of the time, close the show.
Yeah.
That was your ticket seller. It was an old school way of doing things. But in this case, Vincent Kennedy McMahon made a rare exception. Right? It seemed appropriate with the British Bulldog being in his native land and Bret the Hitman Hart being who he was and the story they could tell. Now, granted, we've all talked about the limitations of the British Bulldog, but as a kid, that's not something we pay attention to.
Exactly.
Now, we appreciate it now as an adult of what Bret Hart was able to do with Davey Boy Smith at the time, but they went out there and they had an absolute classic. I'm talking about something that has put SummerSlam in the upper echelon of pay-per-views in wrestling history. And I'm talking about a match where it made fans forget about the main event because nobody talks about anything from that SummerSlam outside of Bret the Hitman Hart versus Davey Boy Smith.
And then let's be real. You're talking about that world title match. You're talking 2 iconic figures. 2 people that you still think about today as iconic parts of our childhood.
Right.
For those who do not know, we're talking Macho Man versus Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, yeah.
Bret and Davey, it made so much sense, like he said, over in Wembley Stadium in his hometown. You had Lennox Lewis coming out there with them. When that music hit, it felt like the stadium rocked when Davey Boy became the Intercontinental Champion. But it was Bret Hart going out there, putting his brother-in-law over, because that's another part of this. This is a family feud, This is a family dynamic. You had Diana Hart, torn between her brother and her husband. Who was she rooting for? She didn't want to see that. And, the pan shots, those are always, memorable. If I'm not mistaken, she was wearing, a tan coat. It's just I've seen it so many times, you know what I mean? These 2 would battle later on, and Diana, Bret's the clear babyface and Davey Boy's the clear heel. But this right here, it was a family-friendly match, but Bulldog had wanted something that Bret Hart had, and that was the Intercontinental Championship. And man, what a night it was. Bret Hart would go ahead and drop the title. But this would also, in our Money in the Bank episode, we talk about, establishing, propelling you to another level. This propelled Bret Hart to another level because it was just 2 months later 2.5 months later, he would become the WWF champion.
I mean, what better family would there have ever been to be able to pull something like this off? We took a family feud that we often see play out in professional wrestling, but at that time, I mean, you're talking about a family that was born and bred into the business. Mm-hmm. Everyone understood their part, they understood their role, which added to the magic of the dynamic and the history and the drama to this matchup. And I mean, such an iconic moment that did a wonderful job. As a kid, I always go back and I always try to look at stuff as I did through the eyes of a child. Now, granted, I didn't see this match incomplete and in its entirety until maybe 2001-ish, maybe 2002-ish.
Okay.
On WWE Access. It was a show that came on Saturday nights. I forgot what it was called before that, but it eventually turned to WWE Access, and they had a section where they would play iconic matches at the end. It was like From the Vault, something like that. And I remember taping it, and I remember that was one of the matches. And as a huge, as a huge Bret Hart fan, I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
That was a match that I was like, man. And granted, I grew up on Davey Boy Smith being a British Bulldog, those larger than life characters. Like I said, my first exposure was always wrestling magazines, Saturdays, catching up on those, pay-per-views and different Coliseum home videos. But this is one of those matches that I think we will always remember for all the right reasons as professional wrestling fans.
Yeah,
And Bret Hart has always given us those chances and those opportunities. And it's like you said, though, even in a loss, this man is such an icon that even in a loss, he won long term. Because like you said, just a short time after that, he will be propelled into that position of being the top guy. He showed everyone that night in the audience and probably backstage that he was capable of carrying a monumentous weight, especially with the state that Davey Boy Smith was in. So to be able to do that and still have an iconic moment, he just undoubtedly deserves the moniker of Mr. SummerSlam. That doesn't get talked about often, but thanks to the Realm, we here covered.
Exactly. Just one last thing, take you back to, me as a child. I think about, watching WWF Superstars and watching this whole thing play out for weeks. And this was, if there was a time where I remember a build-up for something outside of a WrestleMania, this is the first one.
Sure.
Where I remember on this Saturday watching, and then, you see Bret Hart cut a promo, and he's got the title. You see Davey Boy cut a promo he's got the title. And at that time, Superstars came on in Baltimore, Fox 45, at 12 o'clock, and it came on at 4 o'clock. Yep. And then I remember the next week, Davey Boy, when he won, they showed him with the belt. Yeah. And then, you seeing like Bret Hart, kind of like, oh man, and I remember I was torn. Yeah. As a child, I was torn because I liked both guys. Right. Now, Bret Hart would go on to become one of my favorite wrestlers, my top two. Mm-hmm. But this right here, I was, like I said, I was torn. So, right here, this is, like he said, reasons why Bret Hart is Mr. SummerSlam. Put some respect on his name. And like I said, people try to talk about Bret Hart's mic work. But Bret Hart made you believe every time he went out there, he was going in for the fight of his life, and there was nothing more important than beating his opponent and winning the WWF Championship. And that's all you ask for, is believability.
There you go. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. So, let's get ready to get out of here. Want to let the people know, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google. We there. We can also watch it on YouTube. And make sure you watch and share. Let us know why Mr. Bret Hart is why Bret Hart is Mr. SummerSlam. Or tell us who you think Mr. SummerSlam is. Maybe you think it's John Cena. Maybe you think it's Dolph Ziggler. I don't know. Maybe you think it's Shawn Michaels. I mean, you can make an argument for HBK, I will say, HBK's had some SummerSlam moments. Probably better ones than WrestleMania, honestly. It's like, he's like, here you go again. But yeah, let us know what you think. Make sure you follow him at TRDA Brand on Instagram, at Dwayne Allen 24 on the Twitter. Follow me at Brian H. Waters on Twitter, Instagram. And make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us and look for behind the scenes images on IG. Till the next time, too sweet.